Well, good evening. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. It's Sunday evening, and I hadn't intended to shoot one tonight, but I just saw a comment on the last video that I put up that has prompted me to do so. And I want to ask you if you are prepared for the possibility of true horrors that could come our way. And or have you even thought about them? You know, people have a tendency to think generically about, oh, wow, really bad things can happen. But the average person, not having enough experience to understand what the really bad things are, kind of stops it right there. And I know many of you have more experience than that, and I'm looking forward to your comments on this. I'm going to read a fairly lengthy comment from Sink or Swim that I thought brought some exceptional things out. You know, by the way, welcome to everybody. I see we have a lot of new subscribers, so welcome to everyone on YouTube and on Patreon. But those of us who have lived lives where we've dealt with the truly horrible things in life have a certain way of looking at things. And people who have not have a much different way of looking at things. Those of us who have seen the horrors of the world have a tendency to see the worst possible thing first in any given situation. What's the worst possible thing that could happen? And then we work our way back from that. We kind of reverse engineer the situation. Okay, that's the potential end result of a situation. So how do we mitigate along those steps? What steps do we have to take to try to ensure that we never get to that worst point? Or if it does get to that worst point, how do we survive in it? How do we come out the other side, right? Alive or in the best shape possible. It's just the natural way that those of us who have lived those kinds of lives think. People who have not lived those lives think very much differently. They don't particularly look. First off, they don't even understand the worst things that could happen. So they kind of start from point zero and then just go along the spectrum of if something bad happens, it's always a surprise. Oh my gosh, what's going on here? So they're shocked and they're surprised and they're unprepared. And then if there's something even worse than that, that's the same thing over again. They're shocked and surprised and unprepared. And that's the way that I would say 90% of the people in the world are. We're coming into a real interesting time here. This next week could be a real interesting week. It's probably going to give us may give us an idea of what could be coming in the future. But I want to read this comment because as smart as everybody, and I've written 5 books on this stuff so far, right? I've written the books on the whole collapse of the world. How you survive it, how you prepare for it, how you survive it, how you rebuild afterwards. I haven't really gotten into a lot of the really horrible things. I've nibbled at the edges on some things just because I want, families and young people to be able to read my books. And there's no reason to get into the really horrible things that really normal people don't want to hear about, even though they might say they want to hear about it or they understand. No, they don't, because and some of you can be with me on this. As soon as you start talking about it, they shut down. Either they'll tell you right out they don't want to hear about it, or all of a sudden you realize they're not listening, right? Because they don't want to hear it. They can't handle it. But it's important. So anyway, what I was saying is that I've written books about this stuff, and many of you have carried out these potential scenarios in your minds. And I think this is a good exercise. And so that's why I'm going to read this, and I'm going to ask, I look forward to hearing all of your comments as to how you feel about this, what you think about it, how you feel, what you think. There's different aspects there. What you have thought about your own planning. You don't have to give details. And you all are smart enough to be able to give, a comment without giving yourself away, because these kinds of things are pretty much going to be applicable to everyone. And then what are your thoughts? What are your suggestions? This is going to be one of those things where I think the comment section is really going to show the quality of our people here, because whatever comments you have are really going to be helpful. So this is more me asking a question. Have you thought about it, and what are you thinking about it, and what are you going to do about it? I have my own thoughts about it. I don't know that I'll share those at the end or not. I'd rather hear your alls first. Uh, Not that I think that expressing my opinion would sway anybody. We have smarter people here than that. But this is really what it's about, as you all. So I'm going to read this, and for any of you newer people out there, I will tell you that one of the most important things you can do after you watch one of my videos is to read the comment sections. I claim I've got the smartest commenters in YouTube land. I hold to that. And if you want even a little bit smarter, go to the Patreon page, because that is a community of a combination of normal folks and some real smart ones who can get way farther into the weeds on some of the technical stuff than I can. And I learned things from over there on Patreon. So I'm going to read this, and then I'll talk for a couple minutes at the end. And this is from Sink or Swim, and this shows the importance of our commenters. And this was about, what was the title? I don't even remember. Was this about EMP? No, Total War. Total War. Okay. He says the problem with an EMP or hemp is they knock out the fear porn, empathy porn. And then he put a question mark there, like, would it? Okay. He says, I suspect we will be squeezed financially instead. Now listen to this as he takes us through the scenario. Massive price increases, increased taxes, and decreased benefits. Ultimately, the dollar will fall 6 to 18 months max. He says, now I'm gonna stop just another second. Pay attention. This gets very detailed, and you need to pay attention. And you might even want to take notes or play this over again. And we will have a short period, days, maybe a week, for exchange of real fiat dollars for crypto fiat Fed dollars. FYI, it will not be a one-to-one exchange. I agree. It will be a fire sale. At this stage, that's right, because when what you've got is no longer have any use, you've got to take whatever they're offering for it. At this stage, we will be well beyond the Great Depression financially and food-wise. Banks and corporations will gobble up the land and assets of the population. The people will be forced onto the road toward the FEMA camps, however they can get there. There will be no fuel by this period. Driving will be illegal. Rule of law is already dead, as evidenced by canceling Russia and its people, elites getting away with rampant theft and horrific crimes, the pandemic itself, etc. The survivors will suffer and die en masse. Those who manage to stay on their land will face UN security forces that answer to nobody. Is this starting to seem unreal to some of you all? If it is, I caution you against just dismissing this, okay? Because all of these things are real possibilities, not because he said it, not because I've said it, because this stuff is included in a lot of what-if scenarios run by very specialized people. I've seen some of it. You may have seen some of it. Don't let the idea creep into your mind that this will never happen. Oh, this couldn't happen. That causes so many of the problems in our world. Oh, that couldn't happen. So stay with this. Stay with it and listen to it. The survivors will suffer and die en masse. Those who manage to stay on their land will face UN security forces that answer to nobody. There will be no services. That's why every little town has a Walmart that killed off the mom and pop stores. When it's time to pull the plug, Walmart just turns out the lights. Walmart is a great example of public-private partnership. Federal dollars will no longer support rural hospitals. Now listen to this. And again, if you're saying that's just a bunch of conspiracy theory, that's just a bunch of conspiracy, it never happened, there are hundreds of millions of people who have died over the last couple of centuries because they thought that something would never happen in their country. And now we read about it in history books and say, well, that will never happen again. just like they did. Okay, federal dollars will no longer support rural hospitals, and the power grid will be turned off to rural areas. Any who stay after that will be deemed criminal trespassers or a danger to themselves or others with no essential services available. The culling is complete when the last vestiges of society enter the FEMA camps with proof of clot shot required to get in. Summary execution for unvaxxed, as you will be deemed to be rebellious for the camp. You will then be categorized by essential or non-essential. Non-essential will be separated and euthanized. Think that won't happen? That's already happened multiple times in our history. Not in the United States history, but, if you think the United States is special, you got to take a hard look at how the United States has changed in the last 50 years and become more and more authoritarian. Okay, let me find my way back here. And non-essential will be separated and euthanized. Any surviving kids will be surrendered to the controlling agency for education and sterilization. The camps will feed just enough to starve the survivors over time to ensure that they are too weak to fight. Ireland, ring a bell? Do you know anything about the Irish famine, which was really a genocide, and others? Okay, we've seen it in the Soviet Union, we've seen it in China, we've seen it all over the world. But no, it could never happen, right? Even though it's happened multiple times, there are still people out there who say, couldn't possibly happen. And what they mean is they don't have the emotional strength to think about it, which would call upon them to have the responsibility to prepare for it. At some point, when all hope is gone, the people will rise up. Alas, when courage fills their heart, they will be too weak to fight from malnutrition. Thus, the human race is extinguished without destroying the planet with nukes. The globalists can emerge from their bunkers. The meek inherit the earth as we have been programmed to accept. We go out with a whimper, not a bang. Who was it that said the end of the world would be a whimper, not a bang? This is not possible if they shut down the grid. It all comes apart if the television and social media goes down. These services are the top priority in the kingdom of lies. Just a thought, Brother Steve. My city council are good folks, but they're locked up in CNN and hopium. It seems prepping only buys time. This thing is hungry and wants to devour all of our souls. That being said, I'm ready for an EMP attack. Interesting, isn't it? I have friends of mine who have said for a couple of years that an EMP is the only, or a CME actually, because we don't want to be at the mercy of our enemies, is the only hope for a normal life. If you think that what's going on in the United States now is normal, just look at Disney and tell me that you think that's normal. Anyway, your thoughts on this. Now, I know that there was so much in there. He laid out so many of the favorite conspiracy scenarios that he did it very well. That it's hard for the person who hasn't thought about this and who doesn't think about the end game, who doesn't always think about the worst thing that could possibly happen. For the people who aren't like that, it's almost impossible for them to get their head around. They don't want to think about it because they wouldn't have any idea what to think, how to get ready. And the easiest thing to do is to pretend that a problem doesn't exist. So anyway, I know you all out there, there are many of you out there who are extremely smart. And for the benefit of those who aren't quite as tightened up as you are, go ahead and leave all of your comments, your observations, your thoughts down here. And for those of you to whom this has seemed very shocking, I suggest go down and read the comments. Now, one thing, there were always going to be, and here's what I do bounce some comments. And this will be one of those examples to where I'll show you why I would bounce a comment. If I leave down there and somebody just says, that'll never happen. Okay, well, that's a stupid comment, right? That's a ridiculous comment. Go ahead and show us why it will never happen. If you want to write a dissertation and explain why you think it won't, and you think you can support it, go ahead. That's fine. I'm all for people who have opinions, even if they differ from mine, that they can support, but not just that's never going to happen or that's stupid to think that way, because you just show your own intellectual limitations when you do that. I don't allow the comment section to be messed up with that kind of junk. So anyway, for all you other people out there, put it down there what you think. Those who might have found this shocking, read the comments for your information and edification, and let us know what you think too. Just because you may not have the depth of knowledge that some others do, your questions can be important. So do that. Seemed like there was something else I was going to say. It's not coming to me right now. Like I said, I just kind of did this impromptu. But I think this is, oh yeah, I will say something. I'm not really much of a conspiracy theorist. At least I didn't think I used to be. But pretty much every conspiracy, and I haven't looked into all of them. I have not looked into all conspiracies. But every so-called conspiracy theory that I've ever looked into, I came to find a great deal of evidence supporting it. Just saying, right? As they say. Okay. You all have a good evening, a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. But it is impossible to prepare well if you are unable to or refuse to believe or accept the real possibilities of horrors in the future. You all have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.